Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's Fearless Fridays. I am here with Dave Williams. And Dave, why don't you go ahead and kick things off and let us know what were you doing in your previous life and what and where are you now?
Hi there. I'm Dave Williams. Previously, I was a sound designer in London. I worked for independent company for 13, almost exactly 13 years to the day I left. I loved it very much. I loved the job. Uh, and as with that sort of job, you kind of earn your stripes at a company, hence why people stay in those. Not many people. I don't think many people these days have worked for a company for 13 years. It's less common than it used to be, should we say? But in my industry, maybe not so, because I started there as an assistant or sort of, and you earn your stripes and you earn your sort of seat doing the job, and you just stay. And I was very happy there, but now I'm doing the same job but freelance, living in Sri Lanka.
Amazing. So
Um,
I guess the first question is then, if you loved it so much, why was it that you decided to? And I guess you're still doing the same work, as you said. So what was the decision around going freelance and also, I guess, specifically moving to Sri Lanka?
Well, the moving abroad thing was a family decision. My wife had a sort of expat childhood. Her father took the family around the world, so she'd grown up in Indonesia and China and various places like that. So it's just something she wanted to do, or we wanted to do. I'd lived and worked in London. I'm not from London, I'm from Edinburgh originally, but I moved to London after university. So I've done nearly 20 years there. And it was always been just a burning thing that I wanted to work abroad or live abroad at some point. I kind of thought I'd missed the chance when I got married and had kids. Um, and then it's kind of worked out totally opposite, that it's a great time to move abroad with young kids before you get involved in the school system in the UK. But work-wise, I very much love my job. I've always considered myself very lucky that I found. I almost remember the exact moment I realised that this was what I wanted to do, and I did try plenty of other things on the way, and I had the sort of mantra that crossing stuff off the list is as important as adding stuff to a list, or so I did jobs that, and I was happy to say no, I don't like that, move on to the next sort of thing, and they were all kind of sound orientated, but I worked through sort of the music side of things and then worked on sets. And I remember the very first time I did sound to picture, and that was it, sold. And I still feel the same today.
Mm.
So my problem was that having been at the same company for 13 years, and I still am a shareholder there. So a lot of the people, the senior staff, were also shareholders. So the senior staff hadn't really turned over in that time. So we were a family. It was a wonderful work environment. But I just had this thing at the back of my mind. I was very happy now, but I didn't see myself as in 10 years' time as a 50-year-old or 15-year-old's time doing the same thing, like times two what I'd already done. I had a problem. I don't know why. Just didn't sit. It just didn't sit well with me. My father, at the age of 40, completely shifted his life. He changed career, moved countries, from England to Scotland. But he had always just said it was one of the best things he'd ever done, and that always just sat with me as well. So I was, some would call it a midlife crisis. For me, it was just I realised that it was about time, a great time in life to make a major change. My problem was, though, I was very happy in my job, so I didn't want to change career. I just needed to change how we did it. So for years, a number of years, we looked at moving with a job. So I applied for jobs in Asia, Singapore, and places like that. But I ran into the same problem of people staying in their jobs in this industry, as I did. I would have never moved if we'd stayed in London, and I ran into that time and time again. I basically had an offer in Singapore. If the phone had rung over a period of about 3 years, we would have moved. But I was waiting for someone else to move on, and he never did. So so yeah, we had to find another route, and the freelance was the jump that we made. Um,
I was going to say, it sounds like you had a couple of positive role models there in a way that your wife already had the expatsy background, so she had the positive experience of moving around internationally, also as a child, I guess, and as well your dad, as you said, it's so important to have seen that experience. Other people might have had a negative experience that their father really struggled with their business, and that can really influence sort of how we see entrepreneurship, I suppose. Would you say it was extra difficult, I guess, given that you'd worked so hard to get up the ladder, and as you said, you really enjoyed the job? So what were the challenges in saying goodbye to that particular company and job, but also to the stability of the salary and so on, and perhaps also to England, at least for the time being?
yeah, so the job wise, I mean, I'd like to think that I never particularly had an ego about it. I What I'd often said about the job was it didn't really matter to me. It didn't have to be a Nike commercial or anything like that. I didn't have to be working on that all the time to enjoy my job. I didn't even necessarily have to enjoy the commercial or whatever it was, or like it. It might have been a terrible piece of work, but I could enjoy my bit of it. Doing the sound, I could take pleasure out of that. So I, I knew that moving away from London, I was putting the bigger jobs at risk. But I was kind of at peace with that, and I knew that maybe the level of work. Sorry, just to go back one step. Another motivation for coming here was actually to get better at my job. There's this particular part of what I do that's a really creative end of it that I had always had yearned to learn, but just never had got round to. In a busy life, work, family life, commute, all this sort of thing, finding an hour or two every day to learn something new, I was really struggling with. And not just finding the time, but the motivation as well, because at the end of it would have to be an end of day thing. I was a busy guy, and it just wasn't happening. So by the time we wrapped up this whole move to Sri Lanka, which was the coming together of many things, job, family, a couple of unfortunate things in our life, health wise, and a death in the family and things like that. It was just all added to when we made the decision to jump and do something a bit more adventurous than we had been looking for originally. It felt right. It didn't feel that brave, or it didn't feel that crazy, and it felt quite calculated. And some people kept on saying, this is incredibly brave, but we'd really thought it through. We were really at peace with each level of it. And the work side, there was a risk there that I wasn't going to get, the phone wasn't going to ring. But I was at peace with the fact that the quality of the work might not be quite at the same level. But if I got time to get better at my job, it would be one step back for two steps forward. So that would come. And if it all worked out and we end up staying here, which I'd like to say, we've been here 10 months now, and we've just bought a piece of land, so it's working out. That will come back, and even in the 10 months I've been here, I've seen the quality of the work improve, and to the variety. So it's brought many different. There's many different sides to my job now. So it is a very positive thing, and yes, there were positive people involved in making the decision. There was also negative things that happened to us as a family that ended up with us making a more positive decision. So yeah, it was when we jumped on that plane, it did feel very positive all round, and it felt exciting as well. And at age 41, with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, that's a very lovely feeling.
Well, it sounds like a sort of a perfect storm, I guess, of, as you said, positive and unfortunately some negative circumstances as well, and then very well thought through and an intentional decision. Was there anything in terms of, I guess, going freelance or the move? Was there anyone in particular, any resource you used to help you out there to overcome some of the challenges of doing that with the kids, or just work-wise?
I mean, I guess the freelance move uh, was helped entirely by my time in the industry. I mean, fortunately, my black book is the clients that I've worked for over the 13 years. Unfortunately, one of the natures of the industry is there are various grades of work. People who produce top level stuff also produce stuff of different with different budgets and things like that, some of which I would be perfect for. And working here in Sri Lanka, I felt that I could offer it. It just seemed to roll off the tongue quite nicely that you can pay me a London day rate essentially, and get a London quality mix for the price of about 2 hours in a studio in London. So from the client side, there was you can't sit with me. You can't sit in the back of my room and we work through everything together. But not every job requires that, fortunately. And so the actual jump into freelance, the hedge that I made was that the existing clients I had were going to call, and they did. And the most powerful thing I found after that, of way more powerful than me jumping on a plane and coming back to London and knocking on people's doors, is word of mouth and just producing good work. I found time and time again, if you do a good piece of work, unfortunately, back in London, a large part or a certain part of the industry is freelance. So you find producers, the people who make the work or put together budgets and make jobs come together. A lot of those guys are freelance. So if you know some of those guys and they go and work for one company and you do a good job with them, and then they'll go and the producer will move on to another company, but the one they left might use you again, and the one they go to might use you again. So you just continually got to produce good work, and and so that's also a really lovely feeling, because I think maybe back in London I'd become a little bit blasé. I knew I could do the job. I was friendly with a lot of clients, and I felt, because you're sitting there face to face, you feel you can impress them by just having a nice time with them. Whereas here, I only can impress them by producing good work, being reliable, being efficient. So in that respect, I think I am better at my job without having actually found that much time to learn the new things that I hope for. But that will come.
Mm. So it sounds like there's a very smart niche there that you've carved for yourself, as you said, particular level of work that doesn't require, I don't know, a massive agency, doesn't require you to be on site and so on, and a really good value proposition for them. I'm curious, did you have to do anything? Of course, once you have worked with them and done an incredible job, there's the word of mouth and recommendations. But was there anything you need to do to get that snowball going? Did people just hear of the fact that you'd moved and you were now available, or did you have to actively reach out to people and let them know that you were available freelance?
So funnily enough, that is the part of the job, the new part of my new job, because I used to just be a sound designer. Now I'm a sound designer, but I'm also an accountant, a producer, business development. I've had to learn how to do spreadsheets. But yes, that was the part that I was least good at. Just letting people know that you are here. Pitching those emails correctly, timing them correctly, not too often, and I would sit here at my computer and procrastinate and not want to do it, and because it's not natural for me to do that, to just say, hey, how you doing? I'm here, this is what I can offer you, this is what I've been working on recently, hope you're well. But having done it a few times and immediately picked up work from it, it becomes easier. And now I think I'm about right. And sometimes it could be frustrating. There's been times out here where I've felt like a bit of an island. You've sent out some emails to people who, you've got had a long relationship with, working relationship, and there's no acknowledgement at all. But it happened to me earlier today. Then 2 weeks after I sent it, a reply and a promise of some work. And it's incredibly rewarding when it does happen. I think I can't remember fully the original question.
No, that's
But
perfect. I think, as you said, it was something that you did, I guess, have to get comfortable with. It's a bit uncomfortable at the beginning. I come from a branding marketing background, and I still struggle, probably still now, but certainly the beginning, in terms of telling people what I did, and selling myself is very different to selling somebody else. But it's really positive, as you said, that you've just been sort of genuinely reaching out to people. If you don't mind my asking, have you felt that it's sort of, have you been able to manage the ups and downs? Because I guess that's always the fear around freelancing, that one day you have 10 contracts, the next day you have 0. Have you been able to sort of manage that so you feel that it's more or less steady and you can kind of plan the work?
Yes, and it's definitely something I've had to get used to. Fortunately, the phone rang pretty soon after I landed, so there has been some work. I mean, not constant, but work came in the door quite early on, which settled things a little bit. And obviously, I'm not working in a £500,000 architecturally designed studio anymore. So I had to get over the hurdle of, will it actually work? Can I produce work of the quality that it needs to be? And I got over that pretty quickly. But yes, it's much more personal now. So on the day, there are days when I don't have any work. There are some days where I do 2 days work in a day, a long day. And there's been some months where I've earned double what I did in London. There are some months when it's less. But when it all pans out, you have to get used to seeing the big picture, or the longer game. And it's nice now that I'm starting to get. I mean, the nature of my work anyway is it's quite short notice. So I wouldn't expect to be booked up for the next month, or a month in advance or anything like that. But I'm starting to get things booked a few weeks in advance. And sometimes, I can look ahead a few weeks and that week is booked out. And that is really lovely. Because, yeah, it is personal. What I found so far, and I don't know if this is just a thing, but when the closer your hand gets to the panic button, that's when things tend to happen. Something, maybe you just feel it more. Maybe when the job does come in, the relief, or the hand snatching away from the panic button, you sense it more. But so far, touch wood, whenever I have felt that I potentially need to do something different or change tack, or I nearly booked a flight to London at one point. Funny enough, I did come in the end because I got booked in London for 2 weeks. But it's something has always happened, positive, and as I said, there's been months where it's been mind blowing. But I would say, as an average of the 10 months, it's when you really look at it, it's been quite steady, which is incredible. I mean, if you told me 1 year ago that this particular job would be suited to working at the end of your garden in Sri Lanka, and that I could potentially be as rich in terms of financially and rich in happiness, and all of those things, I would have laughed at you. I didn't think it was possible. And even when I made the jump to do it out here, I was assuming that it was going to feel very different, and it was going to be much more of a struggle. Not that it hasn't been a struggle, but I should have. It's easy to say in hindsight, but I had such a good bedrock there from doing it for so long and enjoying it for so long. I mean, the two come hand in hand. I'm not trying to tell you I'm incredible at my job, but I really love it, and I think that probably comes across. And I believe that if you want to be good at something, you do have to love it. And so whatever I've done in the past, has come back to pay me back in terms of the phone ringing since I landed here.
Amazing. I think that's very reassuring and inspiring. And I think it's good to be prepared for having to maybe take a lower income, certainly in the first year and so on, but also fantastic that you've been able to get the work and that it has been, as you said, more or less steady. And of course, we always have those dips. And I think you're right that it's always the lowest point just before we have a breakthrough. We're just about to hop on the flight back to London when that biggest contract potentially comes in. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Just kind of have to take a breath and kind of have the faith that it'll keep coming. You've mentioned that it was a very positive change for the kids, for you, work-wise sounds great, and you're learning more and so on. So what would you say are the best parts of your lifestyle now?
Best parts of the lifestyle are, but funny enough, it's a two-pronged one because it's the best. It can be the best and the worst part of my lifestyle. Is the kind of more fluid nature of my days. I can control the work. I book my work, so I can fit stuff in where and when I want. So up to a point. And the time, so there's a 5.5 hour time difference. So we're ahead of the UK by 5.5 hours. So I can get up in the morning, and I can drop the kids off at school. I can go for a surf, and I can be sitting at I'm rubbish at surfing, but it's coming. But I can be sitting at my desk by 9:30, exactly the same time I was in the UK. And I've got 5.5 hours work before anyone even wakes up, before anyone gets in the UK. So I'm 5.5 hours ahead. So the way that usually manifests itself is I've done most of the work. I've got a mix ready. And by the time the client gets in the morning, it's waiting in their inbox. And then you go through a feedback process generally. This is sort of a cookie cutter day. So they'll watch it and they'll mull it over, and there might be a bit of toing and froing. So when I say the great part of the day is that I work hard in the morning and I quite often get some time off in the afternoon. So when the kids come back from school, we can do whatever, and generally I then will go back to work a bit later on. But in terms of the structure of a day, it works quite nicely. Sometimes I don't go back to work until after the kids might be in bed, about what time it is now. But it's so it breaks the day up quite nicely, and I get to spend family time, which was a motivator for coming here. And I'm happy, and the client's happy. And it's when it all works, it's brilliant. On the flip side, when it doesn't work, and when suddenly feedback starts coming in, just as once you maybe stepped away from the desk, because you would at home anyway, because people have to listen to it, and because of the time difference when you go into the evening, which I totally expect, and I generally stay up till 11:30 anyway, which was end of play time in the UK, even if I haven't got any work to do, because there might be stuff coming up for the next day. But it can sometimes steamroll whatever plans you do have. I'm never too far away from the studio, and I haven't learned to say no to anyone yet. I'm still very much in the mindset of I will do anything that people ask me to do. I don't know if that will ever change. But if there has been a problem, I know you asked about positives, and I'm now talking about negatives. But if there is, it's the same answer. When it works, it's the best thing about it. When it doesn't work, it can be the most stressful thing about it, because I might find myself, somewhere else with kids because it's that time of day here, and suddenly, stuff hits the fan somewhere else, and I need to drop that's the thing. You just got to drop everything and come back to my little room at the end of the garden and get on with it. So yes, you just have to accept that, and that can sometimes be the worst part of it. That's the best and worst.
That's interesting with the time zone, because as you said, there's a positive side to it, and the fact I love that, just to have a few hours of nobody contacting me, I can just work on things. But as you said, there's then the other end of the time zone. I remember once being, when I was traveling while working, I was in Hawaii, and there was no business reason for me to be in Hawaii, so it was like, and the time zone is just not lined up with anyone, so it's always a bit like, oh, I'm in Hawaii right now. It's very difficult to chat to people. But as you say, there's always that side, isn't there? We long for the freedom and flexibility, but there is another side of it, which is potentially sort of too much freedom and the flexibility in the wrong direction and so on. But what I would say though is, as you said, you might not ever change that, but I would encourage you to, as you get more confident, set those boundaries and say no, because I think, obviously, as you said, the time with the family is one of the core reasons why you wanted to move, and you are good at what you do and you have the work coming. And I, in my naive little world, think that, the world is not going to end if they get it the next day. Obviously, that's always an individual business decision, but that's something maybe to work on for the future.
That is definitely the way. The first step into that for me would be, yes, I can do it, but you might have to wait till tomorrow. I think, to be honest, in where I worked in London, there was a booking system. The time was booked in, and once it was confirmed, that's it. It's set in stone. So, if someone wanted to make a change and there wasn't space for it to happen, they had to wait. There was no choice. So here, again, another positive and negative. Here, one of the things people have commented on is my reaction time can be incredible, because I can manage my own time, and down to me. But if I'm working on something that has no time pressure, and something comes in that does have time pressure, I can shift stuff around, and get straight onto it. And for some people that really works. Even though I'm half a world away, my reaction time can be significantly quicker than someone next door. However, I think in my first few steps into the freelance world, I've been so eager to please that's become the norm. That's what I'm trying to offer, and actually, it's acceptable to say yes, you can do it, but I'm doing something else at the moment. It's in the queue. But I have to say, that's right. You've actually just, a light bulb's just gone off. My reaction is to generally, jump as high as I can to get it back as quick as possible, because I feel that's a positive of here, and I want to hammer that stake in or whatever.
I think that's completely natural when you're starting out. And as you said, if that's one of your selling points, almost, that you are that flexible compared to a studio where someone's booked the time exactly, you have that flexibility. But obviously, if you have, I guess, an established relationship with someone, you have ongoing work with them, they know you're great and they're going to work with you, then hopefully you can begin to, push back a little bit, just so that you can have some more sacred and not work until sort of midnight, which sounds a bit tricky in the long run, but great that you can manage it now.
Yes, yes. There's definitely some interesting midnightly. I'm going to say, it's like last night I was here, sat in this very same room with no power and a deadline on a laptop. Funny enough, there was a couple of sockets were working in the house, so the internet was still working. So I sat here with a head torch, working on a laptop with no AC or fan. So. And then running back to the house to actually send and receive stuff. I even, on one of my trips, jumped in the pool because I was so hot that it just. But that that is going to happen. And did I get the job done? Yes, I did. Did the clients aware that it was this end, that what was happening this end? No, but that's because I handled it okay. And the same stuff happens at home. That people aren't always aware of how the situation of their work is getting done, but nothing if not interesting.
I get that. It can happen anywhere, like you say, right? I had a power cut in the middle of a webinar last year, I think, at home in Surrey in England. And the other day I wasn't able to reconnect my screen and I had to sort of pile up a pile. I mean, if you'd seen sort of my behind the scenes, what was going on, it was horrendous. So like you said, of course, if the Wi-Fi is less stable and so on, it can be quite stressful in those power cuts and things, but it can happen anywhere, I guess. So all the more reason actually to relax a bit, because stuff happens and there's nothing you can do as well. If something like that happens, you just manage as well you can.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, because Sri Lanka was the choice. I mean, it seems a bit of a random choice, but we hear the story often. We came here on holiday,
Mm.
just for 2 weeks, and basically fell in love. That was in November. Where so that must be November 2018, and we'd moved here by May 2019. Um, but when on that 2 week holiday, a couple of things without realizing, we were sitting here scoping out where we were going to move to. Some quite major ticks were going in boxes. One of our children got a bit ill. Needed to spend a night in hospital, and they were great. Big tick for. One of the things was the internet. Funny enough, the internet is. I don't need the internet to work. I need it to send and receive the work. It's funny. I think I'm sitting here on a five. I hate to say it, but the beach is about 400 to Surrey the other day, and the guy asked me to split it into one WeTransfer that I sent him. He asked me to split it into 5 different sections because he couldn't download it quick enough in Surrey. Yeah.
There you go. But that's important to consider those criteria. You haven't, again, just sort of gone on the map, hey, we'll go there. You've really thought about the practicalities, haven't you? So I guess, what advice would you give someone who is tempted by this story? Maybe, as you said, maybe loves their job and so, but would love to go abroad, maybe specifically has young kids. Any sort of words of wisdom now based on sort of the hindsight of the 10 months you have had there?
Words of wisdom. I mean, it's hard to put it into one snappy line, essentially, because it feels, when we broke it to people we were moving to Sri Lanka, people were shocked, but to us it felt like the culmination of, probably since the birth of our first kid, probably 5 years worth of things just simmering away that got us here. So I would say my word of advice would be, don't necessarily look for the quick fix. And as I said earlier, I thought even my opportunity to move abroad had gone by getting married and having kids. Those opportunities or doors open all the time just by staying interested, staying in. If there's something you want to do, say move abroad. I'd become so disheartened with trying to find a job that I thought it wasn't going to be possible. But the thought of doing free, isn't it? There's an interesting cross section of people who can work remotely out here. Mm-hmm. It just so happens that my job is one of them. And as I said a year ago, I would have laughed at you if it said that. It was a sense of want. We wanted to do it, not panicking when it didn't happen in the first 3 months, and just building towards something. And the final decision felt quite radical to people because, but that was the bit that made it such a brilliant decision, because we changed it to freelance. It didn't have to be a big city, so we can come to a country like this where it's more affordable. So there's not so much pressure on financial pressure. There's family-wise, there's with young kids, for example. So we have a 2 and a 4-year-old, 2 and a 5-year-old now, and they've never had so many mates. It felt like. For example, making friends here, we didn't move. One of the things we definitely didn't move for was people. We just didn't. It hadn't come into our thinking. We had good friends in London, and we hadn't really considered what would happen. But it wasn't to meet new people. But it's been 100% the best thing about coming, because whatever brings people to a place like Sri Lanka puts you into you're the type of person to move to Sri Lanka. So whatever that quality is, everyone's got it. And there's a, and this is just a complete luck thing, but there's a lot of people our age with kids our age. So it makes socializing, childcare, our kids are constantly play dates, sleepovers, sort of things. So it makes, childcare is easy. If we need to do, if my wife needs, if we both need to be working all day, it's way less of a problem here. We just ask someone, and there'll be someone who lives within 5 minutes of here, who can help us out. So certain headaches that have just been removed. There's other headaches that have been caused, but that's generally something to do with power cuts or something like that. But so advice, back to a snappy line of advice would be just keep going, because if you want it, eventually the right door will open up that matches what you are after. When it does.
I love that, because I think people tend to get caught up in the how, and in particular they sort of come up with lots of reasons or excuses, I guess, why it's not possible. And the shift that happened for you, okay, I'm looking for a job, I'm looking at these cities and I'm not getting the job, and that can sort of go, oh, well, I can't possibly find a job abroad. Likewise, I've got kids, that's not going to work. Interestingly, as you said, I've got all my friends here, childcare, what about that? And actually you've forgotten all about your friends in London. No, not quite, but you've been able to find, for the kids, and that's really interesting. So and I guess, did you ever think sort of worst case scenario, what will happen? Oh, I can just come back and get another job. Was that some part of the thinking?
Yeah. So, but this was, funny enough, that's interesting you asked that, because one of the things that gave us the most amount of confidence in coming here was our worst case scenario. So we felt, so full disclosure, Jen's father passed away. So it must have been September 2018. So that there was a slight financial backing. There was a little pot of money that really helped. So when we went to our worst case scenario, this is how we put it. So if I don't earn a single penny, we could probably last a year or something like that, and we'd come back to our life in London, which we enjoy. But we liked our life. We would just, we'd always look for a change. But so worst case scenario, we could go away for a year, tick the adventure box, get better at our jobs by studying, and come back and feel refreshed. So that felt like, oh, if that's the worst case scenario, there's not really a negative in that, apart from the fact that the phone didn't ring and freelance didn't work. But as I said earlier, in hindsight, I had such a good grounding and such good relationships from just being a professional, doing a professional job for a number of years, that you don't see it from that side, but from this side, that there's such value in that, and that is valuable to other people. And now I see it, because people call me rather than calling someone else, and the work just feeding through to me through a system in a company. Now they call me, and so you really feel valued, and you wonder how you earned it, and you think, oh, it's because I did a job for those number of years, and I've in some ways I feel like I've earned it. Yeah.
No, and you absolutely have. Oh, I'm really happy that things have worked out for you. It's so exciting as well with your plot of land and building a house and so on. I hope you and the kids continue to enjoy it and don't have too many power cuts and scenarios going on.
I'm buying a generator.
That's a good plan. I think that's the thing. There's always a solution, isn't there? There's always some kind of practical answer. There's always a way if you want to find it. So where can we find you online? Do you have a website you want to share, or social media?
I do have a website. Being a sound designer, there's not a lot of words on it. There's just examples of my work, but it's davew.onfabric, which is FABRIK. So davew.onfabric.com.
I'll be sure to share that so that people can find it. And I guess as well, via word of mouth, again, there's another channel for people to hear about your work. And I should say as well that Dave is the genius behind editing the podcast, which I'm sure is very much below your pay grade because you're very much more advanced than that, but nevertheless much appreciated. So everybody who's listening to that, you'll know that this is the guy who's behind it.